Good morning, everyone. My name is Mitch Coons. I'm the Communication Manager for the Clallam Economic Development Council. Thanks for joining us for the Clallam EDC Coffee Chat this morning. We're really excited to tell you a little bit more about the Clallam Forest Product Innovation Program. It's an initiative that we've been working on. It's a 3-year program, and I'm joined by Roy Mann, the Program Manager, and he's going to be hosting the panel. Different project leads are on the call, which we're really excited to dive into. We have some slides to show you. And a lot of content to get through. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we do ask that you remain on mute just to avoid any inadvertent background noise. And if you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat or raise your hand. It is going to be a pretty content-heavy presentation. So unless it's a burning question pertinent to the actual slide, we ask you kind of save them towards the end. Besides that, go ahead and get started, Roy. Thanks for joining us.
Mitch, and welcome everyone. And I share Mitch's excitement for a lot of reasons. One is to give our audience a closer glimpse at the actual activity of the Forest Product Innovation Program. And also, this is the first chance we've had to bring our subject matter experts for the 6 programs that were launched in 2025 together. So, Mitch, if you want to pull up the deck.
Sure.
Quick context setting. It's been just a little over a year since the U.S. Economic Development Administration awarded grant funds for this program. 12 complementary projects, 6 of them were started last year, probably another 6, and maybe even a few more pending some approval from EDA will be launched in this new year. Now, context setting. This is everyone has a hand on the org here, right?
With the county and citywide emergency response.
Someone needs, I think, to mute.
Got it.
First slide is just to show you, I mean, when the McKinley Mill in August of 2024 went idle and many jobs went away, leaders in this region mobilized. Go to the next slide, Mitch, and you can see some of the many groups that made matching contributions to make this program possible. And I want to get to the experts. So what we're going to do is begin with use the same order that went out in Mitch's invitation, which, if I'm not mistaken, is Woody and team with the workforce training program.
Before that, we have our typical host has a question.
Yeah, sorry. I just think it's important, a little bit more context setting, that yes, the community won the recompete grant. However, the job creation portion that we proposed as part of that recompete grant did not get funded. And so this program is not specifically part of recompete. This is a separate program, but it is critically important for our county to have more high-wage jobs. And recompete can't be successful if we don't have that. We would just be addressing barriers and training people to go to Kitsap County if we don't start creating jobs here in Clallam and Jefferson County. So that's what this is about. And we are important partners for them, but this is not part of the recompete program.
Thank you. Actually, that's very helpful context setting, Colleen. And I misspoke in terms of our batting order this morning. Actually, we're going to be hearing from our experts from Moffitt and Nichols to give an overview of the Terminal 1 and Terminal 3 engineering efforts. So, Eddie and Victoria, lead the charge.
Eddie, do you want to start? I think you might be muted if you're speaking.
Yeah, I'm muted. So we had the opportunity to look at the site at Popa, essentially the Terminal 1 and Terminal 3, look at the flow of the traffic, essentially the accessibility of the wharf or Terminal 3, and understand the chokehold or the issue that exists essentially on the traffic routing back. And to do a remedy to that, we called a alternative analysis, looked into 3 to 4 different options with the port, and ultimately, with the help of the port, we arrived at the solution that, if we go next slide. Yes, so this is essentially what we did. We pulled the alternative study and based on that, came up with the solution. If we go to the next one. Yes. So as you can see, this is the existing wharf, the layout that it exists, and you have a older portion which is on the right side, a timber deck that was remaining from previous development, and a more sophisticated concrete on the left side of the terminal. Because of the geometry and the warehouse in front of the access, there is a limitation, a bottleneck where actually limits the turning and the accessibility to the wharf, as well as it also capacity-wise limits the cargo that can go over this portion of the wharf. So with heavier cargo, obviously the access will be either going back through the very left side trestle, and obviously the middle trestle or access is essentially right now occupied by the conveyor belt system that it's located there. So long story short, to address this, if we go to the next slide, we looked, as explained, onto 4 different solutions. Some of the solution resulted in removal of the transit shed and excessive cost around that by need of replacing it. The solution that port and our engineers came up with was to actually come up with a portion of the terminal up that could actually it's actually an expansion. The older terminal will be removed, and this newer part will be actually replaced. And this newer part, it's going to be in line with the existing, so all the piles and the beams going to be in line with that. It will have higher capacity to support the larger offloading if there is any odd offloading. And also it will give the accessibility that it's needed here, shown in with those arrows, and reducing the bottleneck that it used to have. So to address 2 issues addressed right here was the bottleneck as well as the capacity of the wharf. So I really run through it because I was told we don't have much of a time. So if there is any questions, please feel free to ask me.
You were, Eddie, that's correct. Just for clarification, T stands for terminal, right? And it might be helpful just for everyone's benefit if you'd go back to the first slide, Mitch, that shows the aerial, and Eddie, if you could use your pointer just or maybe the second slide, just to distinguish between Terminal 1 and Terminal 3.
Absolutely. I don't know if I have access to it, but no. But the terminal where right now a larger green ship is docked to it, is actually Terminal 1. And in the set I sent yesterday, Roy, I was able to actually outline that. This is a much older terminal. It's mainly used for berthing. It has limited capacity, and it's timber terminal, whereas the one on the left side, which the red ship, the longer and red ship is berth to it, is a much newer terminal with an older section in the front. It has sufficient capacity for trucks to access for offloading of timber and loading of timber, as well as it has the conveyor belt access. You can see biggest problem is the front of this Terminal 3 that is actually a timber dock. To offset the removal of this timber dock and having a slightly bigger dock, we offset that by removing the older chevron axis that you see on the left side of this dock. There you see a bunch of piles with access that has been limited, and the deck has been removed or deteriorated over time. So the plans are actually to remove that portion and be able to get credits to have that larger footprint for the new extension of Terminal 3.
And so I'm just for our audience sake, berthing, that's with an E, allows a ship to stay at a location, but it can't support loading or unloading cargo. Right, Eddie?
Yes, I mean it's limited to the weight of the cargo, and obviously, and we are talking about Terminal 1. It has its limitation due to age, deterioration in the type of wharf. Obviously, this newer portion, we had a lengthy discussion with Chris on what limit we are looking for. We do not want to, design something that is too much and too expensive with capacity that wouldn't be used. And at the other hand, we don't want to design something that it's under capacity, and right away with expansion, you need more capacity. So that, again, was a lengthy discussion among the design team to make sure that we are hitting the right amount and the right design for that expansion.
Thank you, Eddie. And it should be noted, I mean, this effort really is a very close collaboration between Chris Hartman and his team from the Port of Port Angeles. So in the transportation category, and the next project in our batting order, and I'm making a transition here, is our logistics improvement study. And I'm doing so with the notion that we can come back and then start connecting all of these complementary pieces in our own minds and for conversation purposes. So, without further ado, I saw Marianne from the ITM group. Share some highlights with us, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marianne, and I'm with ITM Group. We are a logistics consultant hired by the Clallam EDC, and we specialize in logistics and supply chain management. And so we're bringing that experience to study the logistics for the timber industry surrounding Clallam County. So our goal here is to map and analyze the current state of the infrastructure that moves forest products in and out of the region. We're not just looking at the roads and ports. We are also analyzing the entire system to pinpoint exactly where the pain points are. And as of today, we are still in the active data collection process. Next slide. So to fully immerse ourselves in the picture, we've been taking public data and conducting interviews with key stakeholders who move freight from the timber managers to logistics providers and the port and other government players. So we're taking the data that we found to really understand the truth on the ground. So we're looking at everything from the availability of barge transports to the highway corridors and the difficulty surrounding the I-5. We're also looking at new technologies that have been in the works from different, such as the sustainability, the CSI, and how all of that will eventually fit into the county's long-term master plan. So we're getting a lot of good insight, but we're still very much in the discovery phase. And we're also looking at the viability of the different transport modules, from the barges that the county is looking at purchasing to trucking and other future solutions. And then the next slide. So the emerging themes that we've been seeing are intermodal connectivity. We're seeing a strong desire for better integration between the harvest sites and the export terminals. So we're really looking at reducing the friction of getting those goods out of the forest and towards the water. We're looking at the infrastructure, which is identifying aging infrastructure. The legacy assets have a lot of potential, but many need modernization to handle future volume. And then supply chain resilience. We really want to focus on having the logistics network be robust enough to handle different market and economic and physical disruptions without driving up costs for local businesses. And we look forward to continuing to speak with everyone, and we're looking to provide our recommendations as we go through this study.
Thank you, Marianne. Does that conclude the ITM group's overview for now?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Unless Sam has anything else to add.
I
do
saw many
not. We don't
add-ons.
want to get into specifics, so we're limited on time. So we just wanted to give a broad overview.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
Roy, we like to have discussions based on the
Exactly.
goings on of the project.
Exactly. Okay. Well, then in that case, let's transition to Woody, Bernard, Stephen, and our Forestry Workforce effort. Oops. Looks like we got tribal housing market steady. Here it is.
Okay, well, thank you, Roy, Mitch, and then Colleen for hosting this event. My name is Woody Chung from Oregon State University, and it's great to be here, and then also great to learn about the other component projects. So our project is investing in forestry skills, and you can imagine from this title, it focuses on forest workforce development and training with an emphasis on modern forestry technologies. And our target audience is broad. We plan to reach high school students and college students to build a workforce pipeline. And also, we plan to provide upskilling opportunities for the existing workforce as well. So the core objectives include bridging the skill gap. And a primary example of the gap we are addressing is the rapid adoption of mechanization during timber harvesting, even on steep slopes, where manual timber falling with chainsaws and also the choker setting used to be dominant. So because of this rapid change, the demand for high-skilled machine operators has been increasing. So to address this need, we are building our education and training programs around harvest machine simulators, like the photo shown on the bottom of the slide. This serves two purposes. The first, it can attract the younger generation who likes the video games. And secondly, it provides a safe and effective way to train beginners before they ever step into a real machine. Also, our training programs are focusing on precision forestry, through drone operations and LiDAR technologies. These are readily available tools these days, and by using them, we can basically develop more accurate forest inventories, and we can also map forest stands with incredible precision. And this kind of data sets basically help us better manage our forest lands. So next slide, please. For our project, OSU has teamed up with Peninsula College and the University of Washington's Olympic Natural Resources Center, located in Forks, Washington. And this partnership basically provides the engine behind our program development and delivery. So looking at our timeline, the last year was our foundation year. We focused on outreach and the physical establishment of the simulator lab at Peninsula College. And this year is our design phase. So we are currently building the training modules for PC and also advanced tracks for ONRC. And by 2027, next year, we move into full implementation. So our goal is to achieve a measurable increase in skilled technicians. So we'll be moving from the infrastructure phase to the impact phase. Next slide, please. So for our up-to-date progress, OSU and Peninsula College have been collaborating with PC's Curriculum Advisory Committee. We are currently surveying their members to make sure our simulator-based courses meet both academic standards and also real-world industry needs. For the simulator lab establishment at PC, the college is in the process of purchasing 6 simulators, and they are currently finalizing the lab space and instructor recruitment. And finally, in terms of development of our advanced career training, the development of course materials has begun. So at OSU, we are currently building specialized modules in drone operations and LiDAR remote sensing. And for UW ONRC side, I would like to invite Bernard to give a brief update on their development while wrapping up this presentation. So Bernard, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks, Woody. Yeah, you covered it very well. I just wanted to add that ONRC is proceeding as Woody mentioned. We've done a wide range of interviews and are trying to start our curricular development program, which will focus on both kind of advanced skills development as well as some skills redevelopment for existing forestry professionals. And it's all proceeding very well. We just hired our remote sensing analyst who will be working on this project as well, who starts on Monday.
Great. And also Steve from Peninsula College wants to give a brief as well. So Steve.
Yeah, I'll just give an update as to where we're at in the process. Thank you, Woody and Bernard. As Woody said, we're in the process of establishing a simulator lab here at the college. It actually could be we're looking at a couple of different options for that. There'll certainly be a number of the simulators will be here on our Port Angeles campus, but also since our natural resource management program is focused both in Port Angeles and in Forks, we're looking at housing a couple of the simulators at our Forks campus. And potentially with the recompete purchase that is underway of a couple of mobile trucks to bring education to the more remote parts of the peninsula, we're looking at potentially having a simulator or two on our mobile classrooms to take out to Nia Bay, to Hoh River, wherever the need is. So that's underway. We've received the first simulator. It's here, and we have the other 5 on order. So all that is in process. We're looking at the best ways to deliver the mechanized harvesting and forestry technician programs, whether that be through our natural resources, our existing natural resource management program, or possibly utilizing our community education program to do more contract style training with particular forest industry partners. So that's all being looked at right now by our Natural Resources Employer Advisory Committee, and that will be continuing this year. That's where we're at. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernard and Steve. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Woody and Bernard and Steve. Okay, into the wood product manufacturing category, beginning with our tribal housing market study and Mr. Kyle Zimmerman. Kyle?
Thanks, Roy. My name is Kyle Zimmerman with 123 West Design Collective, and we conducted the tribal housing market study from April to October of last year. And the purpose of the study was to really understand the current barriers to housing that exist for tribal communities here on the peninsula and evaluate the feasibility of using cross-laminated timber process from coastal western hemlock out of the McCaw sawmill and processed by CRTC in Port Angeles to essentially serve those tribal communities through a housing solution. The underlying hypothesis in this study, of course, was to understand the localized supply chain around this. And we believe that, when you work between tribes and nonprofits like CRTC, we're going to create a positive economic effect in this whole region while we do this, and we build a lot of homes for the tribes at the same time. So it's a real win-win. And of course, to test this hypothesis, we had to do a lot of interviews with tribal members, housing departments, mortgage lenders, home builders, granting organizations, really anyone that was working with the tribes currently on the housing picture, and to understand how an innovation product like CLT could really help that. Maybe next slide there, Mitch. This kind of helps to kind of show the supply chain that I'm talking about here. So you'll see you have western hemlock from the McCaw tribal land being cut and dried at the McCaw sawmill. Then it's trucked over to CRTC in Port Angeles, where it's thermally modified. So that's essentially taking a vacuum chamber and putting the wood under an intense heat and pressure for an extended period of time. And what comes out of that is thermally modified wood that we can then dimension, glue, and turn into these large panels, large being typically like 4 foot by 8 foot, 3-inch thick panels. And the benefit of this is we can use these as structural panels for the purpose of home building. So when you hear the term mass timber, cross-laminated timber is one of the components of the mass timber industry. And so it's a really innovative process, and the fact that it's localized here is really important for us and can be a really big economic benefit. Next slide, Mitch. And then this slide just kind of shows really the level of detail we went into the study. It wasn't just kind of at a 30,000 foot level. We really got into the details around different housing products, all the way from ADUs. We went up to multifamily housing and apartment buildings and looked at everything in between for the housing fit for tribal communities out here on the peninsula, but also how CLT can be best utilized in those different build types so that we're being efficient with that and starting to recommend different ways to use it properly. So you see 2 different options on the screen here, just to give you some flavors. So like we went and looked at everything from a small ADU that you could drop into a backyard or something like that, all the way on the right-hand side. This was a design that came out of CRTC, and this is their Bolay product developed with the McCaw tribe out in the Bay. And so we really wanted to deep dive into all these, understand the benefits and where those economic kind of toggles are in the supply chain. The 2 main benefits of this study really, again, economically showing how keeping more dollars in our tribal communities and our region can really benefit all of us, and 2, creating healthier and environmentally sustainable homes. Often these times when we're talking about affordable housing, we often put the sustainability and the health benefits aside. But this is a product that we can build sustainably, and it creates really healthy environments in our homes, which is great. So ultimately, the results of this study were we did a comprehensive strategy to show a roadmap for the tribes, CRTC, and a lot of different county housing organizations on how to come together with this new product and start a program for this. My continued role in this is to be an advocate for finding sustainable building solutions for tribal communities and to help the housing and building communities here in Clallam County kind of get up to speed on what this means for our region. Yeah, thanks, Roy. That's all I got for now.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, and we're doing pretty well. So I'm going to now hand it off then to Nigel Wiley and Ted Sturdivant from the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure to give their overview of two projects, the Forks Industrial Park and West End Economic Revitalization, and also an industrial symbiosis screening, which CSI conducted for our team. Guys?
Thank you, Roy. I'll be running through these briefly, and I'm joined by my colleague at CSI, Nigel Wiley. We're working together on this project. So I'm going to talk about two projects, as Roy said. One that we just launched within the last couple months, the Forks Industrial Park and West End Jobs project, and then speak a little bit about the project that we did last year on industrial symbiosis, as well as what's next on industrial symbiosis, which I'll explain and talk a little bit more about in a moment. Next slide, Mitch. So the Forks Industrial Park and West End Jobs, that project really is first focused on how can we be helpful with what's going on at the Forks Industrial Park, and are there any opportunities that we can identify for West End job creation? So first, at the Forks Industrial Park, we are supporting the city of Forks in their role as the lessor of the industrial park to Riverside Industries, which is which is well underway in getting a sawmill constructed at the industrial park. It's impressive how fast they're moving there. So supporting the city of Forks with their lease agreement and responsibilities, infrastructure at the park, as well as thinking about options for tenant relocation for a current tenant. And then with Riverside, who's building the mill and coming down from British Columbia, they identified in our interview with them just a number of things that they're looking for support and assistance on that include housing for their workers, transport for workers who don't have nearby housing, hog fuel off-taker, access to truck scales, workforce training, as well as incentives for building their next stage, which is cogeneration there. And then also we want to look at, are there opportunities with this new lumber mill being built for industrial symbiosis? Industrial symbiosis is the notion basically that you take one industry's waste or underutilized products or byproducts and turn those into a valuable feedstock for another industry, usually through co-location. Is there going to be waste wood, waste heat, waste water generated at the Forks Industrial Park from this new lumber mill that someone else could turn into value and come in and be a neighbor to Riverside? So we'll be looking at those options. Next slide, Mitch.
Could you just dive into what hog fuel is? I don't know if everybody knows that term.
Yeah, sorry. Hog fuel is just their wood waste from the lumber operation that could be used for cogeneration. They don't have a cogen facility up and running yet. They plan to within a year or so. Currently they're looking for someone to take that at no cost or maybe low cost to them.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch.
And then I guess that leads into the next thing. What's cogen?
Yeah, cogeneration basically means, sorry for the jargon here, is combustion that provides both heat and power. So they'd be using wood waste to fire the cogen facility, creating more power and heat.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Um, so innovation is in the title of this program. It's in the title of the strategy that the EDC has been pursuing around natural resource innovation to create jobs. And so one of the things that we're looking at is, where can innovation provide new value-added uses of North Olympic Peninsula resources? A really rich sort of field there is biochar. We think there's, a high ceiling on potential uses of biochar, but it's still kind of early in the development of the markets for those products and the development of those products. So we're still kind of early in this biochar sort of industry sector development, but opportunities for biochar product, that as we look at biochar and think, how can we accelerate that and actually turn that into companies and jobs on the peninsula? There's a company that is interested in coming there and setting up shop to use biochar to provide carbon for steel making. There are issues around, is there better access to the feedstock itself in the woods? All sorts of market development needs to be done for biochar. It shows great promise in things like water quality, contaminated site remediation, and lots of other things. You can produce carbon or biochar and sell it for carbon credits on the voluntary carbon market. That's available. And then we also are partnering with the University of Washington to review sort of our whole slate of incentives and policies in state government around biomass. Biomass and bioenergy is, there's both high potential there. People are looking at biomass for sustainable aviation fuels and just combustion, thermal pellets for combustion. So again, kind of high market potential, but also there's controversy around should this stuff be used, for fuel and combustion. So kind of more opposition comes in around those things. And then also, we're just identifying our, abundant resources that, may or may not be able to, maybe there's some new innovative products that could be derived from these. So biochar, I just talked about. Coastal western hemlock, are there more uses of the thermally modified hemlock? Are there things that you can do with western coast or coastal western hemlock bark, which is very rich in tannin and could be a source of tannins? Cedar waste piles, which are all over the peninsula, is there some innovative use of those that could create value? Spruce logs is another one. And then also, we've identified that the Makah tribe has some water supply challenges that if they could solve those, that could then unlock really significant new market potential for the fish that crosses their docks currently, and it could take them into a frozen fish market and processing rather than just a limited fresh fish market that they have today. And then lastly, we're excited to see what Isam and Marianne come up with in terms of this, just conceiving of this emerging logistics network on the peninsula. And then the last slide. Yeah, industrial symbiosis. So I explained briefly what that is. And last year, part of this program was complemented some state funding that was also in play to look at industrial symbiosis in 4 communities across the state, one of which was Port Angeles. And we brought in experts from Denmark, where they've been pioneering industrial symbiosis for the last half century, and went through a process with stakeholders and businesses in the Port Angeles area and identified potential opportunities around a publicly owned shared kiln in Port Angeles to address sort of needed kiln capacity. Another was real strong interest in the McKinley Mill site, and they have a big cogeneration infrastructure there. So the potential for getting that cogen plant going again, as well as just hosting other industries doing symbiotic production there. You could use steam from the cogen to send to nearby industries, and then also interest in, can we apply industrial symbiosis at the Forks Industrial Park and any other locations on the West End? And then just a quick mention that we have currently at CSI in partnership with EDC are part of another grant for round two for those 4 communities around the state to continue to develop industrial symbiosis possibilities. And the Port of Port Angeles has identified and is interested in looking at, particularly at the airport, for industrial symbiosis possibilities given new developments there. Um, so we really appreciate being part of this project, Roy, and that concludes our slides.
Thank you, Ted. Nigel, did you want to add in, or do you want to just wait until our kind of open forum?
I think Ted covered most everything, so yeah, I'll wait till the open forum.
Thanks, Nigel. And to everyone, really, as you can see, there's a lot of thoughtful work that's been happening behind the scenes, and I'm really, really grateful for the experts that we've had helping us with this endeavor. One of the things I asked each consultant group is, while listening to these other project presentations, be thinking about how your project connects to the whole, right? So really what I'd like to do is take the last 15 plus or minus minutes and create a kind of open forum, right? Whether it's expert to expert or audience to expert and so on, to see how we can further refine this important work. And it looks like we got a couple of questions popping up in the chat. Mitch, do you want to go ahead and MC some of that part?
Yeah, absolutely. So Colleen mentioned that when the Clallam Economic Alliance, or CIA, group met with Bo Perschbacher, sorry, I'm sure I butchered that, the governor's senior policy advisor for economic development, he shared that the state believes that the residuals from making lumber biomass will be the best feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel, which people are referring to as SAF. There's a huge investment happening across the state in SAF today. SeaTac Airport will require 10% of aviation fuel to be made by SAF by 2030. So huge deal. Kay Richardson asked, what are the forestry technician jobs specifically, and what are the expected wages for these remote sensing careers?
Yeah, well, forestry technician jobs basically machine operators and also those who can manage machines. So, for example, logging contractors, they might have 10 to 100 machines they operate, and then they need machine operators. So one machine requires one operator, and also they need experts who can manage the machines. So operability of the machines, the maintenance issues and all that. So those are the technicians that I'm thinking of. And also remote sensing, regarding remote sensing careers, I don't know the current wages, the salary range for that job, but this increasing need of demand in remote sensing, especially LiDAR and drone, I can imagine large logging contractors, they would have a GIS expert or technicians who can create maps for harvesting units and also operate drones to collect more detailed data and so on. So this is kind of future ready jobs, skills that we are trying to develop the programs for. So
Great.
to answer, I don't know the wage range at the moment, but we are sure that this is the skill sets that the people would need in the near future.
That's great. And I'm sure we'll know more soon on the wages, but I would imagine it's near or at that livable wage target job that we're looking for.
Yeah, the current wage for machine operators in the forest today is in the 40s and $50 an hour. And so with this additional skill set, that's also and we're trying to hit $26 an hour or higher. But with this additional skill set, that would presumably increase their value to the companies.
Great. All right. John Temple asks, can you describe a quick example of the difference in an operation before and after the adoption of LiDAR with drone technology? I'm not sure who wants to take that. Roy, you want to try?
I can jump in.
Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, LiDAR and drone work with just imagery and multispectral imagery are slowly, replacing a lot of ground-based inventory and other kinds of activities, or not replacing, but supplementing it really. And I think these jobs will reduce the cost and increase what we know about the forest, so we can manage it better. And with the work that Woody's doing, one of the real potentials, there's an environmental benefit of being able to do much more complicated forestry management plans that are just simply not feasible right now. So there's the door is flying open. There's an amazing number of new technologies are emerging in front of us, and we really need to get to work to catch up.
Yeah, thanks, Bernard. And not only for the large scale forest management, but also when we look at harvesting unit level. So one forest stand, how to log that area. I think logging contractors these days are increasingly using more LiDAR-derived DEM, very detailed digital elevation model. They can show the terrain, the micro terrain, micro topography within harvest unit. So that gives them the idea how to log the area safely and then also environmentally friendly. So that's really good benefit from this we can get from this high resolution data sets.
And Woody, can you share a little bit more? Why is it environmentally friendly?
Oh yeah, because for example, where to put landing locations, where to put ski trails, where to put skyline corridors, all matters in terms of sediment delivery and erosion potential and all that. So it is very important to understand the terrain. So without this detailed terrain information, we normally use rule of thumbs or experience, right? But now we can get the very high resolution terrain data, and you can see like 3D of the terrain. You can see where's the small the like what is that concave versus convex slopes where the water can flow and all that stuff before the machine hits the ground. So that's the next level of we call precision forestry, but that's the next level for forest operations as well.
And Woody, isn't it true that the less you disturb the forest floor, the less carbon emissions that are sequestered in the ground are being emitted?
Probably yes, because carbon already inside the soil is going to stay there. But if you disturb, then that's going to be exposed to the air. But here's the thing, logging these days, if logging technologies, they don't disturb soil a lot. So OSU has been working extensively in that area, especially tethered logging. So the cable logging versus now we are using ground vehicles on steep slopes with a tether, with winch assist. And then a lot of people are concerned about that technology because heavy machines are running up and down on steep slopes, right? So it will disturb soils a lot. So we've been studying a lot of those cases and found that the soil impact is minimal because of the tether, the winch, because of the winch assistance, the tracks or wheels, they don't spin. Just what are the slippage? There's no slippage, so they actually grab soils when they move. The machines move, so it doesn't display soil a lot. It doesn't create a lot of sinkage. So that's what we found out. So the modern technologies are, I would say, light on the environment, but
That's
still,
great to hear.
yeah, but still, the point of this having this high resolution data is we know better what location would be the best for those machines.
That is great. And thank you for those added nuances, both Bernard and Woody. I'm just mindful that we got about 7 minutes till the top of the hour. A few questions left. Ted has his hand raised. Mitch, do you want to keep driving us forward?
Sure. Jim Hagwood asks, what are your predictions for timber and other manufacturing supply? Any predictions?
I think it's all tied to the market.
Yeah.
It's all tied to the national market and interest rates and that kind of thing. But as far as, Interfor is one of the top performing mills here of all the Interfor mills across North America. And they are going to continue to be a driving supplier for our region.
Great. Paul Gottlieb asks, how much would the ADUs cost that were described in the presentation on tribal housing?
Yeah, I think that's always a difficult question until you know exactly where it's going and what that home type's going to be. But what I can say generally with the ADU, we really looked at a really efficient build with that one, meaning that using the panels, we used them for the full structure, and we looked at having a roof on that as well being CLT panels. And that we got around to about $160,000. So that's about $280 a square foot when you look at the math on that. Kind of similar with the Bolet home. The Bolet home was a pretty simple build. Price goes up on that a little bit because of the hip roof. But what we learned through this process is like really try to use the structure of the CLT as much as you can. So the more you can kind of think about the structure first in the design, you're going to find the price benefits on the back end. But yeah, kind of a long-winded way of saying that it ranges anywhere from about 280 a square foot to all the way up to 350 a square foot if you're not careful in the design and get a little extraneous there.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
I think that's all the questions I see in the chat. Ted, did you have a question or a comment you wanted to add?
Yeah, and this is really for Woody or Bernard. I'm just curious if innovations in technology and workforce, are those opening up possibilities for thinning in environmentally sensitive buffers that currently were not possible? Is that something we should be looking at and thinking about right now, particularly with new buffers coming from recent rules adopted at DNR?
Bernard, would you like to say?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to develop an answer. Going into riparian areas to get timber has always been difficult. You have more environmental concerns, and there may be less timber removed if you're thinning in riparian zones. And the net revenue from going into riparian zones is usually pretty low. So if industries given the choice, they in the past on DNR land, they chose not to even go into the riparian zones, even though they had an opportunity to do so. So I do think that with some of this more, pre-laid out harvesting ideas that Woody's been talking about, I think there really would be some opportunity to increase the efficiency of doing that, as well as doing it in a way that would be less environmentally harmful. And I want to just add that particularly on the peninsula, we have lots and lots of riparian areas of pure conifer that were, harvested across the streams initially and planted to conifers, and the fish would benefit from openings, and they would benefit from hardwoods like alders and maples. And so I think there's environmental reasons why you may want to go into that. Our work with DNR on our T3 project has just recently, we are seeing considerable increases in the number of fish when we put in openings. And so this question is not resolved yet in the scientific world, and in the policy world is kind of lagging a little behind what we're learning. So I think there is a lot of riparian. I mean, it consumes a major part of the landscape. So this is not an insignificant question.
Thank you, Bernard.
That's a very insightful answer, Bernard. Thank you. We're at 1 minute before the top of the hour.
Woody wanted to add a little more.
No, I just want to add quickly that from the technical standpoint, there is a current development of geofencing. So what that means is that, riparian zones, oftentimes we have to mark manually, right, with ribbons. But now with geofencing, machine or people knows without ribbons where the riparian area, and then also we can map the machine locations. So that reduces the tree marking or the boundary marking, as well as regulatory compliance costs, because we can generate maps where the machine was, where the cut tree is located, and so on. So this is current development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Riparian, would one of you want to just explain in a nutshell what riparian refers to?
Along the water.
It's usually a fixed width buffer, and depending upon the kind of stream, whether there's fish in there or not, and just that fixed width alone is part of the problem, because it doesn't fit the landscape. And with this geofencing and things that Woody's just talking about, you could have a variable width buffer much more easily than we have been able to do before, and that alone is a step. An important step.
That is good to know. I want to say thanks to everyone, especially our subject matter experts who have presented today in a very thoughtful and succinct fashion, which isn't easy, because we are now a minute past the hour. And Mitch, anything else, Colleen, to wrap us up?
No, I just want to say thank you. Yeah, thank you for everyone joining. And Roy, any closing thoughts? I know we're about a little more than a third into this program. What can we look forward to?
Only keep asking the questions. How can we keep connecting these dots for progress and to grow our economy in this region? So it's really on us all in a sense. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
This will be on our website later today.
Thanks,
the recording.
Thank you, Mitch.